the threshold of the cockpit is a sacred boundary. In aviation mythology, crossing it without an invitation is the equivalent of walking into the Holy of Holies wearing muddy boots. But tonight, the boots were Prada, the invitation was a threat, and the Holy of Holies was rapidly filling with a fine, white particulate mist that smelled like a Miami nightclub circa 1985. Captain Adrian O'Donnell recoiled as the heavy door swung open. He clamped his yellow oxygen mask tighter to his face, his eyes wide and panicked above the rubber seal. To him, the figures emerging from the fog weren't passengers, they were the four horsemen of the apocalypse, if the apocalypse had a dress code that mixed business casual with flight attendant uniforms. "Stay back!" O'Donnell shouted through the mask's microphone, his voice amplified and tinny in the small space. "I have a crash axe. I am authorized to use lethal force." "Put the axe away, Adrian," Sheila snapped, stepping into the cramped flight deck. She waved a hand through the swirling white haze that had followed her in. "You're going to hurt yourself, and I'm not filling out the paperwork." Behind her, Tasha Green and Luka Markovich squeezed in. Tasha immediately began scanning the instrument panel with the critical eye of someone looking for a liability waiver, while Luka stood with his hands loosely at his sides, looking less like a hijacker and more like a plumber assessing a particularly difficult clog. "Door," Luka grunted. He reached back and pulled the reinforced door shut, sealing them in. The thunk of the magnetic locks engaging was the most comforting sound O'Donnell had heard in 20 minutes. "You breached the flight deck," First Officer Ruiz said, her hand hovering near the transponder code for hijacking. "Give me one reason I shouldn't squawk 7500 and have a fighter jet escort us into the ocean." "Because we're the only ones who aren't currently trying to eat the upholstery," Tasha said, her voice crisp and rapid. She tapped her nose, a nervous tick that was becoming a metronome for her thoughts. "Captain, First Officer, my name is Tasha Green. I am a senior litigator for Crane, Poole and Schmidt. I am currently representing the sane population of this aircraft, which consists of myself, this gentleman, your lead flight attendant, and a DJ named Jasmine who is currently guarding the beverage cart with a plastic fork." O'Donnell blinked. You're high." "We are functional," Tasha corrected sharply. "There is a distinction. The rest of your passengers have zero tolerance. Their serotonin receptors are flooded. They are experiencing acute paranoid psychosis. We, however, have spent the last decade building up a robust immunity to stimulants thanks to the American corporate workload." "It's cocaine," Sheila cut in, leaning against the jump seat and looking exhausted. "Adrian, look at the air. It's not smoke. It's not poison gas. It's snow." The cargo hold exploded a piñata of the pure stuff. Ruiz pulled her mask away for a split second to sniff the air. She gagged and slammed it back on. "Jesus. It smells like kerosene and bad decisions." "High grade," Luka noted approvingly. "Diesel wash." O'Donnell looked at the trio. His brain, trained for engine fires and hydraulic failures, was struggling to process the concept of a mass casualty narcotic event. "So, the passengers aren't terrorists?" "They are Republicans, Adrian," Sheila sighed. "Which, right now, is worse? Senator Vance has declared martial law in first class. He's built a wall out of Toomey bags and he's currently trying to deport the economy section. If we don't do something, he's going to try to open the emergency exit to let the Freedom Indiana." O'Donnell paled. "He can't open the doors. The pressure differential. He has a fire extinguisher and 20 followers who think he's the Messiah," Luka interrupted. "Physics implies they will eventually break something important. Like a window. Or his own neck." "We need to land," Tasha said. "Now. Immediate vector to the nearest capable airfield." You need to declare a medical emergency for 300 souls. I can't just dive, O'Donnell argued, gesturing at the flight management computer. We're over the middle of the Atlantic. The nearest divert is Lodge's Field in the Azores, and that's 40 minutes away. If I drop altitude, the fuel burn increases. If I stay high, the cabin remains pressurized with that. Flush it, Luca said. Everyone looked at him. The air, Luca clarified. It's a closed loop, yes? Recirculation fans mix fresh air with cabin air. If the source is in the cargo hold, the recirculation is pumping the powder back in. Turn off the recirculation fans. Go to full fresh air intake. Open the outflow valves manually. Ruiz looked at O'Donnell. He's talking about a smoke evacuation checklist. It's not smoke, O'Donnell said. It's a particulate suspension, Tasha argued. Same physics. If you open the valves, the pressure differential sucks the air out. You purge the cabin. If I do that at 35,000 feet, we depressurize the plane, O'Donnell snapped. Everyone passes out from hypoxia. Including the kids. The kids are already out, Sheila said softly. The hardness in her voice cracked, just for a second. Adrian. The babies are sleeping. They stopped crying 10 minutes ago. Their little hearts can't take the speed. If we don't get them fresh air, they aren't going to wake up. The silence in the cockpit was heavy. The hum of the avionics fan seemed to drop an octave. O'Donnell looked at Sheila. He saw the fear behind the tough guy act. He remembered the woman who had dragged him out of a casino brawl in 1989 when he was a junior pilot who had gambled his per diem. Full fresh air, O'Donnell said, turning to Ruiz. Kill the recirc fans. Packs to high. We're going down. Going down? Ruiz asked, hand already moving to the overhead panel. Emergency descent, O'Donnell said, his voice finding its rhythm. We drop to 10,000 feet. That's breathable atmosphere. We open the outflow valves wide. We turn this tube into a wind tunnel. We blow the snow out the back door. That's going to be rough, Ruiz warned. Structural limits. Fly it like you stole it, Tasha advised. My firm will handle the liability. O'Donnell grabbed the yoke. He disengaged the autopilot. Cabin crew, prepare for rapid descent. Sheila, get back there and strap in. It's going to get bumpy. Sheila stood up. She looked at Tasha and Luca. You too. You're deputized. Get back to the barricade. Make sure the senator doesn't fall on anything important. I'll take the senator, Luca said. I have the belt. I'll manage the liability, Tasha said. And by liability, I mean Brenda. Back in the cabin, the Republic of First Class was facing a constitutional crisis. Senator Vance, having been toppled from his luggage while thrown by Sheila's well-placed kick, was now tied to seat 1A with a leather belt and 3 silk ties. However, his mouth was unfortunately still free. This is a coup! Vance screamed at the ceiling. I demand a recount of the oxygen. The deep state is hoarding the molecules. Around him, the scene had devolved from a riot into a surrealist painting. The Secretary of Defense, the large man Luca had hogtied, was worming his way across the floor like a caterpillar, trying to bite the ankles of anyone who passed. The woman who had been breastfeeding her pug was now trying to teach the dog to sing the national anthem. And in the center of the aisle, Brenda Miller was holding court. Brenda had recovered from Tasha's legal verbal assault, but her paranoia had mutated. She no longer believed she was under attack, she believed she was the plane. "I can feel the hydraulics," Brenda whispered, pressing her ear against the galley wall. Her eyes were spinning like slot machines. "My veins are the wires. If I stop humming, the engines stop." She began to hum a high, atonal note. HMMMMMMMM. "She's the alternator," Jasmine Vega said, watching from the safety of the business class curtain. Jasmine was bobbing her head to an internal rhythm. "If she stops, the beat drops. Let her hum." Marcus and Tyrell were sitting on the floor behind the barricade of beverage carts, exhausted. They were the only sober people left in the main cabin, aside from the sleeping children. "Man," Marcus whispered. "I just wanted to see some old buildings. Maybe eat a pastel de nata." "We're in a flying crack house, bro," Tyrell said, clutching a bottle of water like a holy relic. "Just keep your head down. If the white lady stops humming, we run." Suddenly, the floor dropped out from under them. It wasn't a drift. It was a plunge. When a pilot initiates an emergency descent, they don't glide. They cut the thrust to idle and push the nose down to nearly 20 degrees. The sensation is that of a roller coaster cresting the first big hill, but it doesn't stop. It keeps falling. The plane groaned. The airframe shuddered under the stress of the speed brakes extending on the wings. Inside the cabin, gravity momentarily vanished. For a glorious, terrifying second, the laws of physics were suspended. The pile of luggage that made up the senator's wall floated into the air. The half-eaten pasta trays drifted upward like space debris. The senator's tie floated around his head like a halo. "Rapture!" Vance screamed, straining against his bonds. "I am ascending." Then, physics remembered its job. The plane stabilized its pitch, and everything that had floated up came crashing down. Suitcases rained from the ceiling. The pasta landed on the Secretary of Defense. Vance was slammed back into his seat. "My mandate!" Vance groaned. In the rear of the plane, Tosh and Luca were holding onto the grab handles of the exit row. The G-force was crushing. "He's flushing the system," Luca yelled over the roar of the wind. The sound of the air changing was deafening, a high-pitched shriek as the outflow valves opened at the rear of the fuselage. "It's working!" Tasha shouted back. She pointed at the vents. The thick white fog, which had been stagnant and swirling, was suddenly moving. It was being sucked toward the rear of the plane, drawn by the vacuum created by the open valves. It streamed past them like ghosts being exorcised. But the sudden drop in pressure had a side effect. The normies, the passengers whose brains were boiling, felt the pressure change not as a mechanical event, but as a biological attack. Their ears popped painfully. The sudden change in oxygen tension hit their overstimulated nervous systems. In row 20, Gary the accountant woke up from his daze. He felt the plane diving. He saw the fog moving. "They're crashing US." Gary screamed. "They're diving into the ocean." Panic, which had been disorganized, suddenly found a singular focus. The cockpit. "Stop the pilot," someone yelled from the back. "Take the wheel," screamed the grandmother in 14C. Like a murmuration of starlings, the mob turned. They forgot their internal squabbles. They forgot the imaginary snakes. They united against the one thing they believed was killing them, the authority. A wave of bodies surged forward, fighting the G-force, clawing their way up the aisle. They were climbing over seats, scrambling over each other. Just outside the cockpit, Luca yelled Tasha while seeing the human wave approaching. "We have a problem. They're charging to the cockpit." Tasha realized. They think we're crashing. We are crashing. Jasmine yelled, sliding past them on a meal tray like she was surfing. Controlled crash. It's the remix. Hold the line. Tasha ordered. We have to protect the door. Luca cracked his knuckles. The arthritis was still gone. The cocaine in his system was singing a song of violence, but his mind remained cool, a block of ice in the fire. I need a weapon, Luca said. Sheila appeared from the galley, staggering under the G-force. She was holding the heavy, stainless steel coffee pot, now empty. Coffee service is over, Sheila said, handing it to him. Decaf only. Luca weighed the pot in his hand. It was solid. Senator Vance. Tasha shouted at the wall of luggage. New Deal. We need your wall. The immigrants are coming from the back. Vance's eyes snapped open. The political trigger word cut through the drug haze. The caravan? Vance shrieked. Not on my watch. He struggled against his belts. Untie me. I will defend the border. Tasha looked at Luca. Do we untie him? He's a lunatic, Luca said. He's a lunatic with a lot of repressed rage and 40 years of racquetball experience, Tasha countered. Untie him, Sheila commanded. We need the meat shield. Tasha scrambled over the debris and unbuckled the senator. Vance exploded from his seat, ripping his silk tie from his head and wrapping it around his fist like a boxer's tape. For the Republic! Vance bellowed. He charged toward the mob of economy passengers, grabbing a Toomey carry-on as a shield. The battle lines were drawn at row 5. On one side, a wave of paranoid, terrified passengers convinced they were dying. On the other, a disgraced senator, a smuggler with a coffee pot, a corporate lawyer with a deadly closing argument, and a DJ surfing on a lunch tray. This, Sheila muttered, lighting her third cigarette as the plane plummeted through 20,000 feet, is why I hate flying coach.